Welcome, thank you for choosing our channel. Help us out by subscribing, liking the video, and leaving a short comment. We greatly appreciate it. Make yourselves comfortable. The story is about to begin. Time was a thief, and Lyra was its chosen victim. At 24, she wore the cruel handiwork of its plunder, like a delicate, tragic costume. Fine lines, almost invisible to others but screamingly obvious to her, mapped the corners of her eyes. A few traitorous strands of silver threaded through her dark hair, glinting under the light. Her joints ached with a weariness that belonged to a woman 4 times her age. She was a mayfly trapped in amber, her life a frantic, accelerated blur toward an unnaturally early end. Doctors had given her condition a sterile, clinical name, a rare progeroid syndrome, but Lyra knew it for what it was: a curse, a ravenous fate that devoured her youth day by stolen day. But Lyra was not one for quiet acceptance. Where others saw a tragic wilting flower, she harbored a furnace of defiance. She had poured her dwindling energy not into ticking off a bucket list, but into research. She devoured ancient texts, folklore, and whispered legends, treating her quest not as a flight of fancy, but as the world's most desperate clinical trial. Her search for a cure had led her down a rabbit hole of myth, culminating in a single recurring name: Cassian, the Timeless One. A creature said to be so old, time itself had forgotten him. A vampire. The legends were consistent. His manor was a place where time stood still, a forgotten estate deep in the fog-shrouded hills outside the city. It was a mad hope, a final desperate gamble against a stacked deck, but it was the only one she had left. The manor, when she finally found it, was exactly as the legends described. It wasn't decaying or decrepit. It was paused. A grand Gothic structure of dark stone and ivy, it seemed caught in a single silent moment. The iron gates, though ornate, were not rusted. The dust on the flagstones seemed artfully placed, not accumulated. As she pushed open the heavy oak door, which swung inward without a creak, she stepped into a world of absolute stillness. Dust motes hung suspended in the shafts of moonlight that pierced the gloom, unmoving. The hands of a grandfather clock in the hall were frozen at 2:45. The air was cool and utterly motionless, carrying the faint, clean scent of old stone and something else, something ancient and sterile, like the inside of a sealed tomb. She found him in the library, a vast 2-story chamber where every book seemed perfectly preserved, their spines uncracked, their pages untouched. He sat in a high-backed chair, a figure of impossible stillness, a glass of dark red liquid untouched on a table beside him. He was beautiful, with the cold, perfect beauty of a classical statue. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, pale skin that seemed to drink the light, and eyes as dark and deep as a starless night sky. He did not seem surprised to see her, only weary, as if her presence was a predictable and tedious interruption. "Another pilgrim seeking the fountain of youth," he said, his voice a low, melodic baritone that held no warmth, only the profound boredom of eternity. "You are mistaken. There is no fountain here, only a long, dry, unchanging road. Go home." Lyra's heart hammered in her chest, but she held her ground. Her fragility was physical, not spiritual. "I'm not seeking eternal life," she said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the heavy silence. "I'm seeking a life, a normal one." She stepped into a beam of moonlight, and for the first time, he truly looked at her. His ancient dark eyes traced the faint lines on her face, the weariness in her posture that belied her years. He saw it then, the frantic, accelerated rhythm of her life, a candle burning furiously from both ends. It was the antithesis of his entire existence. "My fate is to die of old age before I've even truly lived," Lyra explained, her voice raw with the injustice of it all. "Time is devouring me. You are a creature outside of time. I've come to ask you to share your stillness." She took a shaky breath, her plea hanging in the motionless air. "They say a vampire's kiss can grant immortality. I don't want forever. I just want enough. For the first time in centuries, a flicker of genuine interest stirred in Cassian's dark eyes. He had been approached by the vain, the power-hungry, the terrified, all begging for an eternity he found to be a curse. But this was different. This fragile, defiant creature wasn't asking for his power. She was asking for his curse, his stillness, believing it to be a cure. The irony was exquisite. He rose from his chair, his movement a fluid, silent glide that seemed to displace no air. He was a paradox, a being of immense power and profound apathy. But her strange, desperate courage had struck a chord in the silent, dusty chambers of his soul. He stopped before her, so close she could feel a chill emanating from his skin. He studied her face, his gaze tracing the path her stolen years had carved. "You are a firefly," he murmured, his voice a soft, dangerous whisper, burning so brightly, destined to extinguish so soon. He raised a hand, his long, cool fingers hovering just inches from her cheek. "And you would ask a stone to share its flame." The decision hung between them, a silent, monumental choice. To interfere, to break his eons of passive observation was a risk. But to turn away this strange, burning soul felt like an even greater one. Her defiance of fate was a song he had long forgotten how to sing. Cassian looked down at the fragile, fierce woman before him, and for the first time in 1,000 years, he felt a stir of something other than ennui. Her proposal was absurd, a desperate plea based on half-truths and folklore. He knew his bite was no simple cure-all. It was a complex, unpredictable transmutation, a rewriting of biological law. Yet her defiance was a flicker of warmth in his cold, static world. To him, who had seen empires rise and fall with the same detached indifference, her desperate fight for a few more decades of life was utterly, strangely compelling. "The stories you have read are crude things," he said, his voice a low murmur in the still air. "They are the guesses of frightened children trying to describe the sun. The outcome you seek is not guaranteed. The price could be far greater than you imagine." "The price of doing nothing is a certainty," Lyra countered, her chin held high. "It's oblivion. I will take the unknown over that, any day." Her resolve sealed the bargain. This was not a rescue, nor was it an act of compassion. For Cassian, it was an experiment, a deviation from the endless, flat line of his existence. He extended a hand, his long, cool fingers gently tilting her head back, exposing the delicate, pulsing line of her throat. "As you wish, Firefly," he whispered, a hint of something ancient and predatory in his eyes. "Let us defy fate together." He bent his head, and Lyra closed her eyes, her body trembling with a mixture of terror and exhilarating hope. She expected a sharp, violent pain, but the sensation was entirely different. It was a cold, piercing pressure, followed by a profound, spreading numbness that seemed to extinguish all the aches and pains of her accelerated life. A wave of pure, static energy flooded her veins, a feeling of absolute stillness that mirrored the manor around her. For a breathtaking moment, she felt what he felt, the quiet, unchanging peace of eternity. All the frantic ticking of her internal clock went silent. For Cassian, the experience was a shock. He had tasted the blood of thousands over the millennia, each a unique flavor. But this was different. Beneath the simple taste of life, he tasted time itself. It was a frantic, chaotic current, a raging river of stolen moments of accelerated decay. It flooded his senses, a bitter, intoxicating brew of life and death combined. It was the most vital and most horrifying thing he had ever tasted. He pulled back, a dizzying sensation overwhelming him. The connection was broken. Lyra stumbled, her knees weak, and leaned against a bookshelf for support. A profound change had already taken root within her. The ever-present, deep-seated ache in her bones was gone. The fog of weariness that had clouded her mind had lifted. She felt light, her body no longer a prison but a vessel of newfound, quiet strength. She caught her reflection in the polished silver of a candelabra on a nearby table. The change was subtle but undeniable. The faint lines around her eyes seemed softer, the desperate, haunted look replaced by a healthy, natural glow. It had worked. A tear of pure, unadulterated relief traced a path down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion, turning to him. But the words died on her lips. Cassian had staggered back against his desk, his hand pressed to his temple as if warding off a migraine. A look of utter confusion and disbelief was etched on his perfect, statuesque features. "What is this?" he murmured, his voice strained. He held up his own hand, turning it over in the moonlight. For the first time in centuries, he could see the faint blue tracery of a vein beneath the pale skin, and within it, the ghost of a slow, rhythmic pulse. A pulse. The very concept was alien to him. Then his eyes fell upon his reflection in the same silver candelabra. His face was unchanged, but his hair, at his right temple, a single stark white lock of hair had appeared, a thread of silver in a sea of unending night. The horror of the realization dawned on them both in the same terrible instant. The curse had not been broken or undone. It had been transferred. Lyra's stolen time, her accelerated fate, had not vanished. It had found a new host. He had absorbed her curse. He, Cassian, the timeless one, the being for whom centuries passed like fleeting moments, was now shackled to mortality. He could feel it, a foreign and terrifying energy now humming within him, the ticking of a clock that had been silent for millennia. Lyra stared at him, her joy curdling into abject horror. She had not found a cure. She had merely passed on her disease. She had defied her fate only by forcing it upon another. She was free, but her freedom had been bought at the cost of his eternity, leaving them bound together by a terrible, intimate, and irreversible exchange. The silence in the timeless library was shattered by the frantic alien rhythm of Cassian's new heartbeat. It was a thunder in his ears, a frantic drum against the backdrop of an eternity of silence. He stared at his reflection, at the single lock of white hair that was a brand of his newfound mortality, and felt the first true wave of panic he had known in over 1,000 years. Lyra, her own heart aching with a profound and terrible guilt, rushed to his side. "Take it back," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Please, there must be a way to reverse it. Take it back." Cassian looked at her, at the vibrant life now blooming in her cheeks, at the absence of the weary lines that had haunted her eyes. He, with his eons of knowledge of blood and curses, knew the truth. Such a fundamental exchange was irreversible. A soul could not reclaim a fate it had already shed. "It cannot be undone," he said, his voice strained, unfamiliar with the effort of pushing words past a beating heart and lungs that now demanded air. "Your frantic river of time is now my own." He sank into his chair, not with his usual fluid grace, but with a heavy weariness that was utterly foreign to him. He felt the pull of gravity in a way he never had before, the weight of his own limbs, the dull ache of muscles that had not known fatigue since the fall of Rome. The days that followed were a strange inversion of their previous dynamic. Lyra, now brimming with a calm, steady vitality, became the caregiver. Cassian, the eternal, all-powerful being, became the fragile one, a stranger in his own body. The timeless manor was no longer a silent tomb, but a laboratory for the study of mortality. He was consumed by the strange, terrifying, and sometimes beautiful sensations of being truly alive. He experienced his first sunrise in centuries. Lyra found him standing before an east-facing window, the thick velvet curtains pulled aside. He didn't burn, not as the legends said, but the direct light on his skin was an agony of overstimulation, a pins and needles fire that was exquisitely painful. Yet, he did not turn away. He watched the golden light spill over the hills, and Lyra saw a look of pure, unadulterated wonder on his face. It was the first new thing he had seen in an age. She became his guide to the mundane miracles of life. She brewed him tea, and he was fascinated by the warmth of the cup in his hands, the steam that fogged the air. She prepared a simple meal of bread and cheese, and he ate. the textures and tastes an explosion on a palate that had known only the monotonous flavor of blood for millennia. He found it crude and overwhelming, yet undeniably real. Lyra stayed by his side, driven by a powerful sense of responsibility that was slowly blossoming into something more. She read to him from his own library, the ancient stories taking on new meaning. They were no longer just tales of mortals who lived and died. They were a roadmap to the world he now inhabited. In sharing these simple moments, a new intimacy grew between them, a bond forged not of passion or desire, but of a shared, strange fate. He, the creature who had lost his eternity, and she, the woman who had been granted a lifetime. One evening, as they sat in the quiet library, Cassian looked at her, his dark eyes, once so empty, now filled with a complex storm of emotions. "I have existed for eons, Lyra," he said softly. "I have watched civilizations turn to dust. But in all that time, I never truly understood the sweetness of a single, fleeting moment. Not until now." He felt the slow, steady progression of time, the seconds ticking by, each one a precious coin he had never known he was squandering. His eternal prison of monotony had been broken, replaced by the terrifying, exhilarating freedom of a finite life. Lyra's heart swelled with an emotion she couldn't name. It was more than guilt, deeper than gratitude. It was a profound connection to the ancient being before her, now made vulnerable, made human by her own desperate act. She had sought him out to defy her fate, but in doing so, she had rewritten his. "You have lost everything because of me," she whispered, the guilt still a sharp edge in her voice. "I have lost a cage," he corrected gently. He reached across the small table between them and took her hand. His skin was no longer cold as marble. For the first time, it was warm. "You did not just give me your curse, Lyra. You gave me your time, and I find I do not wish to spend what is left of it alone." She looked into his eyes and saw her own future reflected there. She was free from her disease, free to leave the manor and live the normal life she had craved. But the thought of leaving him to navigate this strange new world alone was unbearable. Her defiance of fate had not been a solitary act. It had bound her to him inextricably, and she found that she did not want to break that bond. She squeezed his hand, a silent promise passing between them. The future was uncertain. His newfound mortality was a mystery they would have to unravel together. But for the first time, the timeless manor did not feel like a tomb. It felt like a beginning. Two souls, one who had been running out of time, and one who had had too much of it, now stood together on a new road, with a shared, finite, and infinitely precious future stretching out before them. Sometimes, in our desperate fight to defy fate, we don't break the curse, we simply pass it on. But true life is not measured by the length of our days, but by the value of our moments. In sharing another's burden, a timeless prison can become a finite paradise, proving that a shared mortality is infinitely more precious than a lonely eternity. Thank you for spending your precious time with us at A Fang Love Story. If you were moved by Lyra and Cassian's journey, please defy the algorithm by liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. We'll see you in the next chapter.